Kicking off with the weekend vibes. Let's talk, we go live. Bobby fans and fish tag Hank. Miami Dolphins, we got your back. Saturday noon is the place to be. Catching Dolphins, talking fantasy. From the field to the fan debate. Fins talk today, don't be late. Fins up, we ride until the end. With Bobby and Hank, they're your best friends. Podcast popping every week, no delay. Join the crew, Fins talk today. Live chat and stats so prime. Miami hustle all the time. News and views will pave the way. Dive on in, it's Fins talk today. Top plays and what went wrong. Breaking down each game so strong. Fans united, feel the beat. Fins talk, Taylor can't be beat. Fins up, we ride until the end. With Bobby and Hank, they're your best friends. Podcast popping every week, no delay. Join the crew, Fins talk today. Fins up, we ride until the end with Bobby.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Steve Molloy, your host of Aging and Strong. Thank you for joining today, the premiere show of Aging and Strong. Make sure you come in here. When you come in here, you hit that like button, subscribe, share with everyone, all your friends, your families, your neighbors. This is a show if you want to get strong. And it doesn't only apply to 55 plus, but it applies to everyone, youngsters as well. So they will get a benefit out of this as well. So today we're going to talk about why do we want to get strong? Why do we want to be strong? Well, let me just back up a little bit and tell you a little bit about my story. I was born in the 50s, 59, so I'm 65. I was born in the era where bodybuilding was a big deal. Back in the late 60s and 70s, started getting very popular. You had the Joe Weider magazines and things of that nature, and all the different gyms opening up around your town. And most everybody was bodybuilding. Even back then, powerlifting wasn't really something that the youngsters looked at. It was very rare if you find somebody who was doing powerlifting. Okay, but they're a different breed. We're not talking about bodybuilding. We're not talking about powerlifting. What we're going to talk about for the aging and strong, and some of these youngsters too as well can benefit, is strength training. Strength training. Building strength. It's totally different from bodybuilding and powerlifting, right? Powerlifting, you're trying to build the most, it's a competition. You're trying to lift the most weight in different weight classes and things of that nature. Bodybuilding, you're trying to look cute with your body, all the aesthetics, right? That's what you're looking for. And as a youngster, I was into that. And I tried all the different programs that were in the Joe Weider magazines, right? That all these bodybuilders were trying to master, trying to do. And they didn't work for me because, number one, I'm not genetically gifted like that. And a lot of folks think bodybuilders just go in there and they work hard, and they do. And they do all these different exercises and spend hours in the gym and eat all this, different types of foods and things and nutrition and all that. And that's part of it. But you also have to be gifted, right? You have to have the proper genetics, the thin skin, all that kind of stuff. And you've seen these guys around. They've never lifted weights and they look like they have. Those are the guys I'm talking about. And they're very few and in between. But on this show, Aging and Strong, we're not going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the average Joe, people like you and me. Maybe some of you are bodybuilders. Maybe some of you are aging, right? You're in your 50s and your 60s or 70s or 80s. Or you're younger, right? 20, 30, 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever. Okay, that's good. I'm glad you're here if that's you, because you're in the right spot. So Why is it important to get strong? Well, let me go over a few things why. And we're not talking about bodybuilding here. We're not talking about any of that kind of stuff. Okay. We're talking about the average Joe, again, you and me that are trying to get strong. And these are some reasons why. And I'll get to that in here in a second. Okay. So the way that we're going to get strong, there's many ways to get strong, right? I mean, you can use body weight. You can use machines. You can use your kettlebell. There's isometrics. There's all kinds of different things that that you can do to get strong, right? But the best way to get strong and why you should get strong, you need to use barbells. Yes, barbells. Barbells have been around for a long, long time before I was even born. Okay. All the machine stuff that you see now and all these gimmicks that you see, right? That they call functional training really isn't functional training. Like some of these football players, some of these gifted athletes, right? They're gifted athletes, right? They can do all this stuff. They can do all this functional training, bouncing on balls and all this balancing acts that they do and stuff like that. Like if they're in a circus, they can do that. That's great for them because they can do that. But for the general population, right, guys and gals as well, like you and I, that stuff will only get you hurt. Okay, you might be able to do it eventually, right? If you practice and practice and practice, but you're not going to get strong doing those things. Okay, the best way to get strong is barbells, the old school barbells. I remember when I got my first pair of barbells was when I was 14 or 15 years old, and I got them from Sears and Roebuck. Everybody who I don't know if everybody remembers Sears, but it was a big department store back in the day, and they had these barbells, 110-pound barbells, and they were plastic on the bar. The actual plate was made of concrete and had plastic around it, right? Plastic coating around the concrete. Those were the barbells back in the day. So that's what I used. And honestly, I did, like I said, I tried all the barbells, the bodybuilding stuff. And I knew, eventually it wasn't working for me. And then I found out, a lot of these guys are on drugs. Yes. About 99.5% or more are all on drugs, steroids, different various drugs and things like that for the recovery, right? They take them for the recovery and they do work hard. But the only way they're going to work hard is if they're on drugs. A normal person like you and me to try to build like them naturally, we'd have to take, there's no way. There's just no way we could do it. We would burn out. We would overtrain and we would burn out and we would be sore and hurt and every day, So anyway, getting back to on track here. So barbell training is the best way to go. My preferred method, and hopefully it's yours as well. Now, eventually, if you want to use other kinds of equipment like your machines, like dumbbells, right? Like kettlebells and things of that nature, that's great. All the power to you if that's what you want to do. But first, we want to build a basis, right, of strength, a basis of strength. Once you get up there and you build your foundation, and to be honest, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, some of these bodybuilders back in the 60s and 70s, right, Mike Minster, all these guys, that's basically how they started. A lot of them started just basically powerlifting and strength training, right, using the basic exercises on barbells, right? So let's get to that. I keep putting it off. So let's get right to it. I'll try not to, overwhelm you with too much information today because I've got a lot of information, a lot of research that I've done on my mind. And I could go on forever and ever and ever. But we'll take baby steps and we'll save the rest for further, for following episodes. So basically, barbells, you want to use barbells. Okay. And those are using your barbells, right? It's good for your balance, your coordination, right? You're using your whole body, right? Where machines, you're not. I'm getting back to the machines again. I just can't stand machines. But machines, you're not. Machines usually is a one joint, one muscle exercise, an isolation exercise, and you're really cheating because you're not balancing. Sometimes you're sitting down and you're doing your chest flies or whatever. You're sitting down. I would prefer dumbbells over machines any day. But anyway, so barbells is the key. Now, some older folks, they may have some injuries, old injuries and things like that. Because when you're old, like me, you do have some injuries from growing, from maybe overtraining in the past, falling off your motorcycle, off your bike, whatever. You broke your arm, you broke your leg, whatever. You may have old sports injuries when you were younger. So we're gonna have some, lingering injuries, right? Like pain from that, reoccurring pain. Just from old age alone, you're going to have pain, right? Arthritis kicks in, osteoporosis kicks in if you're not careful, if you're not strength training, things like that will creep up. And then all it takes is one fall, and you're one fall away from being hospitalized, right? And maybe never being able to walk again if you're up there in 60 or 70 years old or whatever. So we don't want that. So barbell training. And barbell training is good for muscle loss, right? Even if you're in your 70s and 80s and you think that it's too late to build muscle and to get stronger, it's not. It's not. You can get strong at 100 years old, you can get strong. There's just different ways that you have to approach it. But so muscle loss and then strength loss. Right? So those are two things. If you don't strength train, you will get muscle loss and strength loss. So what does that mean for the older folk like me? If you have strength loss and muscle loss, that means it's going to be hard for me to go grocery shopping, right? Bring my bag of groceries in the house. It's going to be hard, struggling to get those bags of groceries in the house. It's just going to be tough on me, right? Or playing with the grandkids, being able to run around with the grandkids if you have grandkids or young kids or whatnot, right? Running around the yard with them, playing baseball with them, playing basketball with them, wrestling with them, things of that nature. So that's something you don't, and it's the inevitable too. Because if you don't do any of this, if you don't take care of your body, right, by eating right and getting stronger, these things are going to happen. It's inevitable as you get older, aging and strong. That is the key. You've got to get stronger as you age, and starting at a young age is even better. So anyway, so how does it help barbell training with the barbells, right? It stimulates that muscle growth, that muscle loss. It's going to stimulate that growth again. Now, of course, if you're older, it's not going to happen as quick as if you're younger, right? So it's going to take time. You just have to be patient. And there's certain ways that recovery plays a key role, right? Those are one of the ways that you can combat that, right? The muscle growth, okay? Because your muscles and all that stuff, right? When you're working out, you're building, you're getting stronger, you're breaking down that muscle, right? And so the only way for that muscle to rebuild itself is you need plenty of sleep, 7 to 8 hours of sleep a day, and you need rest. You need a break from that training. Me, as an older person, I usually take 2 to 3 days off between my work days. Okay. Some people can go 2 days. I like to go 3. That's just me. For me, I feel better when I go back to working out and doing my strength training. I feel better after a 3-day rest. Now, I don't mean the 3-day rest of sitting down on the couch and eating potato chips and getting fat. I'm not talking about that. When I say rest, You can do an active rest. You can walk. Okay. You can do a sport. You can bike ride. You can play a little basketball. Okay. Now you don't want to overdo it, especially when you're first trying to build strength. If you haven't lifted, haven't done anything like this in a long time, okay. If you overdo it with the extracurricular activities, it's going to affect your strength training. Okay. I want to get you as strong as efficiently as I can, right? With the least amount of time, to get strong. So maybe after 2 or 3 months, then you can slowly incorporate some of those things you enjoy doing, right? Whether it's bike riding, boxing, tennis, shooting hoops, whatever. But if you do that at the time that you're building your base strength, right? And that's what we want to do. We're going to get you strong as fast as possible. And I'll show you how to do that. All right. But you want to get as fast as possible, strong as fast as possible, right? Then you want to kind of ease off on some of the extracurricular activities, at least for 3 to 4 months or so. Okay. So anyway, so let's get back to what we were talking about, which is why strength training, right? What does it do for us? Also, it not only stimulates muscle growth, right? But it promotes a significant it also promotes significant amount of muscle protein synthesis and growth. Okay, protein synthesis. So that's another thing. When you're younger, you can that synthesis will occur more efficiently, right? Because we're just young, right? But when you're older, it takes a little more time, and it's not as quick as if you're younger. So you have to be patient, work smartly. You don't want to get hurt. You don't want to do any of that, because if you get hurt, that's just going to put you back, right? Nobody likes that. So again, it enhances strength. And the way that you do that with barbells, right, is it's called progressive overload, right? Progressive overload. So you want to increase the weight on your barbell, right, over time. Again, if you're younger, you can do this more efficiently and a lot quicker. When you're older, you have to be smart about it. You have to work out smart about it. And it takes a little more time. If you're 55, 60, 70 years old and you just started, you've never lifted a weight in your life and you've just started, you're behind the 8 ball. Okay. You're never going to be as strong, right? And your recovery isn't going to be as good as you were, as it was when you were in your 20s and 30s and 40s, and sometimes even 50s. It's an individual thing, right? Some folks, bodies can recover quicker, even in their 50s and 60s. Some are just gifted like that. But the average Joe, like you and I, right? We're not like that. Okay. So it enhances strength, but you have to do it by progressive overload. In other words, loading more weight on the bar. That is the key. You have to load more weight on the bar. If you don't load weight on the bar and you're staying at that, let's say 100 pounds, you're never going to get stronger. You're not getting stronger. Okay. You're just staying at that weight. You're not getting stronger. So in order to get stronger, you have to force yourself to add another 5 pounds or 2.5 pounds or whatever it is to get that. You have to force that muscle, right, to break down, and then it will grow, right, when you recover. So you have to continuously progress, right? Overload, add weight to the bar. Also, barbell training, getting stronger, gaining strength. It also improves your bone density. Okay. Resistance training improves your bone density. Okay. Which, when you improve your bone density, right? When older folks go in for a bone density test, that's how they determine if you have osteoporosis, right? because your bones are getting weaker. They're losing, all that, you're losing some bone, right? I'm not a doctor, so I don't know the medical terms for this or everything. So I'll do my best of explaining it to you all. Hopefully you get the point. But you go in for a bone density test. That's how they determine if you have osteoporosis, right? And that's a common condition. That is one of the common conditions in older people. Okay. Now, if you have osteoporosis, your bones are very brittle, right? They're very weak. Your bones, not your muscle. Your bones are very weak and brittle. Your muscles too, for that matter. You probably have lost a lot of muscle mass as well. But you go fall down and you break your hip, you may never walk again. You may never walk again. Okay? And your doctor's going to prescribe you a medication for your bone, for your osteoporosis. But the best thing is weight-bearing exercises, barbell training, getting stronger. So, what are the effective barbell exercises for combating combating the osteoporosis and the muscle loss and all that stuff? What is it? What are they? Well, these are the exercises I use and continue to use. They're the main core exercises that I continue to use, and it has benefited me greatly. I've gotten stronger. Okay. When I started doing the research and I discovered the strength training program that I'm about to reveal to you, maybe not today, but maybe the next podcast. But basically, when I discovered that, I was 58 years old. 58 years old. Again, I'm going back to my bodybuilding days when I was a kid, right? 14, 15, 16, up into my 18, 19, 20, right? Didn't work for me, right? I used a lot of isolation exercises. I used a lot of, what is it? A lot of dumbbells and things like that, a lot of machines and stuff like that. And I wasn't really getting stronger because I didn't know how to get stronger. I didn't know that progressive overload method in the most efficient way to do it, to build my base strength. And guys, just to get off and deviate a little bit, this program that I do, basically, right, just the basic program that I'm going to present to you eventually here, this is good for any sports athlete, for any tennis player, for any baseball player, basketball, football, and in the military. Unfortunately, the military program, in my opinion, is not very good. And I was in the military for almost 20 years. Okay. And I ran my 2.5 miles. I did my push-ups. I did my sit-ups. Now, when I got out, they were starting to incorporate, before I got out, they were just starting to incorporate CrossFit, which I think CrossFit kind of brought back barbell training to the light again, your basic barbell training. Except for me, for older folks, I do not recommend CrossFit. It's a good way to get hurt because it's not a consistent program. You're always doing different exercises and you're not, perfecting your form. Form is very important. Okay. Now, you don't want to overthink it. You don't want to have analysis by paralysis, right? But you want to definitely try to perfect your form as much as possible, is what I'm saying. Because if you don't, then you can get hurt, and there's ways of doing that. All right, so let's move on. So the basic exercises, okay? And there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, I would say 5 to 6, okay, that are basic exercise. And these are compound movements. Compound movements. What I mean by compound movements, multiple joint movements, right? They're going to move they're going to build more than just one muscle group, because our body is a unit, right? It's not built up of individual parts. They all work together, right? Yeah, they all work together. Your arms work together. When you lift your arm up, it's just not your arm lifting up, right? You got your shoulders, you got your biceps, you got your triceps, and you got your forearms to lift up, right? and then your scapula in the back and things like that. So basically, you're using multiple muscle groups when you're working out with compound movements. Okay. I would say the king of all exercises are one of the best. There's two really, but one of the best and is most important for everyone, right? But it's most important for older adults, 55 plus, 50, 55, 60, 65, right? The most important exercise. And I'll tell you why. Number one, it's the squats. It's the squats. And if you don't know what a squat is, I will be showing you. I will have demonstrations on how to do those exercises in my garage gym here. As you can see, I have weights back here. I have my punching bag back there when I do my conditioning. I love boxing. So I boxed, and I don't spar anymore, and I don't go into the ring and fight, but I still do the conditioning phase of boxing, right? So I hit the heavy bag, hit the double in bag. I can just get on. I love boxing. I have a passion for boxing too. So I won't get into that too much, but that's just one of the things you can do for conditioning. And that's what I enjoy. Yeah. So the squats, what do the squats target? They target the quads, the hamstrings, the glutes, which is crucial for overall strength, right? For your stability, for your balance. That's one of the first things that go when you get older. As you get older, now some of you may not understand this when you're younger, even your 30s and 40s and 50s, you may not understand this. But as you get older, you get into your 60s, 70s, first thing to go are your legs, your balance, your coordination, all of that. And that's what the squat does. That the squat fixes all that. It helps with your coordination. It gets you stronger, and it helps with your balance as well, because you've got to balance the barbell. You've got to balance the barbell when you squat. When you squat down and you lift up, it's one of the most natural movements that any human being does is squatting, right? Now, the number 2 exercise is deadlifts. Deadlifts, where you're pulling the bar off the ground. You're pulling the bar off the ground with your legs, your hips, your upper body. You're going to pull the bar up, right? Off the ground. Deadlifts. Deadlifts is like the squat carries over to the deadlifts, because the deadlifts, they hit the legs as well, and it hits the back, your back, and your core, your stomach muscles, right? And it helps with your balance and coordination as well. So it's kind of like a carryover of the squat. Now the squat, well, the main targets that I mentioned about the squat, the quads, the hamstrings, and the glutes, that's just the main targeted muscles that it hits. But again, it hits every muscle in your body. The next exercise, let me grab me a sip here. The next exercise is the bench press. The bench press. A lot of folks think the bench press is just a chest exercise. No, it's more than just a chest exercise. Number one, you have to be stable on the bench when you're lying back on the bench. You got to have your feet flat on the floor. You're pushing your feet into the ground, so you're using your legs, your calves, your core, right? And not only are you building your chest, but you're building your shoulders and your triceps. So that's one of the best upper body exercises. One of the best. The next exercise is the overhead press, military press, French press, the press, folks call it. So that's another good exercise, all around body body exercise to build your strength. And for balance, again, you've got to push the weight up, and it's good for your stability, right? You've got to be stable when you're lifting it up. Again, it builds your core, builds your shoulders, it builds your arms, your upper back. Very crucial exercise for functional movement, because a lot of times when you're at the house and you want to grab something from up top of the cabinet, or if you want to have to reach up for something and it's relatively heavy, you want to have some strength to pull that up and down and balance and coordination, right? So you want to be able to get that object down and bring it to you. So that's where presses come in handy. This is an exercise that I don't use. Well, I do use it, but in the beginning, the exercises that you're going to use are the squats, deadlift, bench press, and overhead press. Okay. Those are the exercises you're going to use in the beginning, in the bench press, if I didn't mention that. But another good exercise is barbell rows. Now, there's different types of variations of barbell rows. I'm a little more advanced, so I use a different variation than the regular standard barbell row, but you can Google it, barbell row, and see how to do it. I use the underhand grip, but I won't get into that. But basically, you can incorporate barbell rows if you want, but I don't recommend it in the beginning, but I do recommend it as a light day exercise when your deadlifts start getting very, very heavy and you're doing deadlifts 2 or 3 times a week. You want to throw a light day in there, because you're going to start grinding them deadlifts, and you don't want to grind every day, right? So we throw a light day in there, and barbell rows is good for that, on that light day for deadlifts. And it targets the back muscles, and it's important for your posture and overall strength. So all these exercises that I just mentioned, those are your basic barbell exercise, core exercises that you should incorporate into your program, for life. Now, when you build that base strength, and eventually we're going to have to tailor the lifting to your needs, to your strength training, to your needs. Okay. And we won't get into all that right now, but basically, that's where you're going to start. And those are the best exercises for building that base strength. So some good advice for starting out, especially if you've never lifted in your life, or even if you have lifted and you've had a layoff for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, or even some folks, like for instance, I'll go on vacation for 10, days or 2 weeks or whatever. And sometimes I'll do exercises like body weight exercise and things if there's not a gym around or something like that. Or I just won't do it at all. I'll just be lazy and just enjoy my vacation and don't work, because family first, man. Let's keep this in perspective. This is for your general health, right? But you don't want to make it an obsession in your life, okay? Where it interrupts family time and things of that nature, okay? So whenever I come back from a layoff, or you've never strength trained in your life, or you're coming back from a longer layoff or whatever, you want to start slowly. And this also applies to not just barbell training. It applies to anything. If you're a jogger or whatnot, you don't want to come back and just completely, let's say you've been off for 10, 15 days. You're going to start, you're going to do that 8-minute mile again. No, you want to start off slowly and then gradually build up again. Okay. A lot of times when you start off slowly and you try to do everything at one time, you get discouraged and you quit. I've been in that position before, so I know. Okay. You don't want to quit. You want to make this a lifetime event, right? Like brushing your teeth every morning, like eating dinner every day, like taking a bath every day, right? Like going to sleep every day. You want to make this as part of your life, okay? But not an obsession. So you want to start slowly, specifically talking about barbell training. You want to start with lighter weights and focus on your proper form before you increase your intensity, right? Before you add your weight to the bar. Okay. So in my program, there's warm-up sets, and the warm-up sets basically are preparing you for the heavier lift for your work set, they call it, but you're also practicing your form. That's why it's very important for a warm-up, not only to practice your form, but also to warm up your muscles, warm up your body, get into the flow of things, especially when you're older. Those old bones take a little while to get warmed up. So just like an old car, you have to warm it up a little bit before you take off, before you can drive down the road. Hey, Finn Sammy, thank you for joining, brother. Appreciate you, brother. Everybody else that's in here, if you haven't liked already, go ahead and like, subscribe if you like the content. If this is something you're interested in, appreciate it. I promise you won't be disappointed. Where am I? Yeah, start slowly. Then gradually you want to increase the weight, as I was saying, right? You want to increase your reps. If you don't know what reps are, we'll get into that another time. And your sets. And over time, you want to continually challenge your muscles. If you don't challenge your muscles, then they're just going to stay the way they are. You got to challenge them. Okay, you got to make them work. You got to make them earn that strength. And eventually, this barbell training does get harder as far as the weight is concerned, right? But if you start off slowly and you eventually go from A to B, there's a process. And then when you get to B, you might say, oh man, that's a heavy weight. Now you might say 300 pounds is a heavy weight, or 200 pounds, or whatever your goal is a heavy weight to deadlift. But eventually when you get there, you'll say, wow, this is great. I can do it. You'll surprise yourself. Trust me, you will. If you go through the process correctly. Yeah, so progressive overload. Consistency is the key in anything in life, right? Consistency. What I mean by consistency? Well, whatever you set your goal for as far as working out, if it's 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or 1 day a week, I don't recommend anything I don't recommend anything less than 2 days a week, but 1 day a week is better than no days a week, right? So whatever it is, 1, 2, or 3 days a week, right? You want to be consistent. You want to be consistent at try not to miss many workouts. If you miss a workout, I got it. There's a family event or something, or you get, you got some kind of business appointment or whatever. I get it. You can't, whatever the reason is, whatever that might be. If you miss a day, don't be so hard on yourself. There's always the next day. Then just do it the next day. Okay. But be consistent, whatever it is, 2, 3 days a week or 1 day a week, be consistent with it. I didn't want to make this too long, so we're going to cut it off right here after this one other point I wanted to make. Yes, very important. Very important. All this will not work if you do not have adequate rest or you don't have adequate nutrition. If you eat like a bird, you're not going to get stronger. Okay? You've got to eat a well-balanced diet. And especially as older folks, we, believe it or not, we need more protein than the younger folks. Why? Because we don't process the protein as efficiently as the younger folks do. That's why we need a little more protein. That should be the main core of your meal, is protein. Good protein. Meat, fish, poultry, yogurt, milk, cottage cheese, any kind of hard cheeses. Good sources of protein. Beans are good protein, but they're not animal protein. Animal protein is the best protein, in my opinion. And you can do the research on this yourself. Animal protein is very bioavailable. You have all your vitamins and nutrients in protein, in your animal protein, right? Fish, chicken, all that stuff. Okay. But that's very, very crucial, very important to have adequate rest. And when I say adequate rest, I mean that includes your recovery, not lazy recovery, active recovery, maybe going out for a walk, or, doing something, going fishing, some type of exercise, a little walking, maybe a little shooting a few little hoops, something not so hard. Your first 3 or 4 months. After that, once you build the base strength, then it's up to you to decide what your goals are from there. Okay. You can go different directions. You can maintain, you can do powerlifting, you can do bodybuilding. Just depends on what your goals are. Okay. So I'm going to call it a night for this. This was a great show. I appreciate you all joining. We'll do this again next week, same time, 7:30 Eastern time, Friday night on the Fins Talk Sports Network Extra. I really enjoyed the time tonight. Make sure you all get strong.